Cultural Differences Between Hong Kong and Beijing by Tanner Stewie, Sam Casberry, and Andrew Olson. To begin the presentation, we have our study abroad group pictured here at the Great Wall of China at Mutianyu outside of Beijing. This is the group that went to China to learn about business and culture. We will begin with our first stop on the trip, Hong Kong. The saying in China is one country, two systems, because Hong Kong was not under mainland China's control until 1997, and it still has many of the same laws that it did when it was a British colony. One of the most significant differences between Hong Kong and Beijing is the British history of Hong Kong. The UK directly controlled Hong Kong for 156 years, and the effects are easily noticeable today. In Hong Kong, all of the cars are left-hand drive, and everywhere else in China, they are right-hand drive. This photo shows writing on the street that is there to remind tourists to look in the opposite direction before crossing the street. Like in the US, smoking is prohibited in many areas of Hong Kong. Smoking is not allowed indoors while in Beijing, but it is allowed nearly everywhere else. This is because of the more international influence in the culture of Hong Kong. This photo shows a sign banning smoking in an open park near our hotel in Kowloon. While Mao was in power, he actively tried to destroy religion so the people of China would only have allegiance to the state. Hong Kong was not affected by this because of their British rule at the time, and they were able to keep their religious identity. Religion is much more prominent in Hong Kong than in Beijing as a result. This giant Buddha is just one of the many religious sites around the island. Here is another photo of the giant Buddha in Hong Kong. The Buddha is a symbol for Buddhism worldwide, and the statue is visible from miles away. Cows are a religious symbol to both Hindus and Buddhists, so they are treated with respect, especially around the religious sites in Hong Kong. Livestock would certainly not be roaming the streets of Beijing. Herbal medications are very popular throughout Beijing and Hong Kong alike, but Hong Kong has found a way to capitalize on this with their many well-lit herbal medicine convenience stores. Herbal medicine stores such as this are found all over Hong Kong. Circle K and 7-Eleven have a very large presence in Hong Kong due to their ability to thrive in small shop spaces. Real estate is less expensive in Beijing, and the stores there are significantly larger as a result. Due to a limited amount of expensive real estate, the people of Hong Kong have had to culturally adapt to living in small spaces. The same is true in Beijing, but it is even more true in Hong Kong. Small, crowded places have become a cultural norm. Fresh meat, seafood, and produce is sold throughout Hong Kong in a series of small shops and temporary stands. Permanent food stores are much less of a staple in Hong Kong, and this is again likely due to the crowded living conditions. This is an open meat market in an alleyway in downtown Hong Kong. These markets allow shop owners to sell food with less overhead. Here we have a street packed with produce vendors in a small street in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a very large city with very little landmass, so everything in the city is crammed together and no room is wasted. This is evident by the hundreds of skyscrapers that embody the city. Here depicts another photo of how crammed everything feels in Hong Kong in order to house the people and businesses that they have. There isn't even room for graveyards to spread out in Hong Kong, so people are buried extremely close together wherever there is room for them. This picture was shot from a busy highway. The only areas of Hong Kong that are not crowded are areas where it is too hard to build because of the landscape, or areas that are far away from the actual city. In contrast, Beijing is a much more spread out city and is nearly entirely flat. The people of Hong Kong have culturally adapted to do the best with what is given to them. This photo shows how large buildings were built in the only small patch of flat land that was available. Hong Kong sits on a bay, with water running through the middle of the city. The ocean is a distinct element of the culture of the island. People on the island have survived off of the ocean for centuries, whether it be through fishing or shipping. The people in Beijing have thrived with agriculture and manufacturing. Trends in Hong Kong and mainland China are different. As an example of that, this picture shows a huge trend in Hong Kong McDonald's that is nowhere to be found in the rest of mainland China. Hong Kong has a much more Western culture than Beijing. Another big thing in Hong Kong is horse racing. They have two large racing tracks in Hong Kong. This one is in a population dense area. The government had decided that this prime real estate was best used as a large, low elevation racetrack. This is again another reminder of the British influence in the culture of Hong Kong. Horse racing is just as popular, possibly even more popular in Hong Kong than it is in Western countries. Now we move on to the second half of our trip, which was Beijing, the capital of mainland China. While Hong Kong has the giant Buddha, Beijing has the mausoleum of Mao Zedong. Mao attempted to destroy religion in China and place himself as the supreme, all-powerful leader. Today, his image is still seen all over China, and his body is preserved in this building in Tiananmen Square. Thousands of people visit the building every day to view the body and pay respects to their leader. He has become a god in the eyes of many. Near Mao's mausoleum are many more important and impressive-looking government buildings. Most buildings are privately or corporately owned, but many more buildings in Beijing are owned by the government. This is because Beijing is the center of the Chinese political system. Mao's photo is even on the gate to the Forbidden City. He has become an enduring symbol of power in Beijing and has a nearly mythical status that is usually reserved for religious deities. Unlike Hong Kong, Beijing has a rich history dating back thousands of years. Significant cultural sites in and around the city constantly remind people of Beijing and its powerful past. The Great Wall lies just outside of the city and is a symbol of China at home and abroad. China's vast culture and history often included altercations with surrounding lands. The Great Wall on China's ancient northern border separates its own land from what was once Mongolia's, who historically invaded China. Although Hong Kong is a very important city, it does not have the rich history and cultural heritage of Beijing. Many Chinese citizens remember their past and put great importance on it. This man on the Great Wall was dressed as an ancient warrior and was profiting off of tourists taking pictures with him. Due to its more isolated nature and lack of racial diversity, foreigners stand out much more in Beijing than they do in Hong Kong. Chinese people in the Forbidden City were excited to see us because we were American and they wanted to have their picture taken with us and the TCU flag. Locals in Beijing would frequently take photos of our group, but this did not happen in Hong Kong. Mainland China was closed to foreigners until the late 1970s, and today they are still excited to see people different from themselves. This fascination with foreigners is another cultural aspect of Beijing that makes it drastically different from Hong Kong. Beijing has one very important thing that Hong Kong does not: excess land. Beijing has plenty of unused land and is not afraid to use it. Because of this, Beijing is very spread out and open. This openness affects their culture by giving it a feeling of being less crowded and hustled. Beijing does have tall buildings, but the huge amounts of flat land allows for greater urban sprawl. The Olympics changed Beijing in countless ways. It forced China to quickly update and westernize the city so it would be easier for foreign tourists. This did change the culture of Beijing significantly, but it is still much less of an international city than Hong Kong. One of the structures that arose as an effect of the rush and structural improvements to get ready for the Beijing Olympics was a place called the Bird's Nest near the Olympic Village, which was also a creation for the Olympics. All the structures go widely unused today, but they are still grand reminders of an event that changed China for the better. Copyright laws are somewhat different in China than they are in the US. Throughout China, you can find knockoff versions of almost anything, but nowhere has a larger market for knockoff goods than that of the silk market in Beijing, where an entire large building has been dedicated to those who manufacture and sell goods that resemble name brand items for a fraction of the price. Hong Kong, on the other hand, is much more focused on the real and original versions of those goods. This statue of Marco Polo is a reminder to the Chinese people's past, when the Western world of Europe needed China for their goods such as silk. Explorers and merchants would travel thousands upon thousands of miles, a good amount of it by foot, to see China and all of its wonders. We hope you enjoyed the presentation, learned a few things about China, and have been motivated to take your own trip there someday. If you go, you will learn so much, and if you have half as much fun as we did, it'll be the trip of a lifetime.